So a few years ago, someone decided that it would be a good idea to make a whole bunch of videos in a row that would require me to take books off of my bookshelves and then have to completely put my bookshelves back together. I regret everything, but welcome to the 12 Days of Margaret. Hi, Margaret from the future here, real quick, just to let you know, there's going to be lipstick on my teeth for probably a good portion of this video. I'm not sure how long it has been that way. I'm aware. I'm not refilming it, guys. So you just get to deal with it. And I get to deal with it. Hello, my lovely friend, it's Margaret. Welcome back to the channel. Today, if you hadn't guessed by the title, is my birthday. Because today is my 37th birthday, I figured why not recommend to y'all 37 books that I absolutely love, adore, books that were important to me at a time in my life, or changed my brain chemistry, or just need more people to read them. If you do not know what the 12 Days of Margaret is, it's 12 days of content, my end of the year content, that starts on my birthday and goes all the way to some date in January that I can never remember, whether it's the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th. It's one of those, but goes all the way into January, all of my good end of the year content. You're going to be getting hauls, you're going to get my best and worst stuff, you're going to be getting a couple of vlogs that I've been working on for a while. You'll just be getting all kinds of fun little stuff that kind of wrap up my reading year. Anyways, long story short, let's get into 37 books that are in no real particular order except for the very last one, and how much I love them. We're going to start off right off the bat with one of my oldest favorite characters, but we're going to go we're going to come a little bit forward from when I first saw her, because my favorite run for Catwoman is the Ed Brubaker Darwin Cook run, starting with Catwoman, The Dark End of the Street. This run came in right off the bat. We are following Selina Kyle as she's just coming back from the dead. She kind of had been in hiding, letting people think she was dead, driving her poor man absolutely insane, looking for her, and she comes back with a brand new look and potentially a brand new outlook on life. This is one of my favorite runs, as I've already mentioned, of Catwoman. I just love the things that we learn about Selina and we learn about her as a character. This really got us into some stuff, some of my favorite Catwoman lore. This is pre-New 52. I love this. I love Darwin Cook's art style. It really makes this era of Catwoman pop, and I also love the soul searching that we are seeing Selina do, because she has been kind of an anti-hero type character in the past, but this fully solidifies her as not just takes her out of the rogues gallery and into fully one of Batman's most staunch allies. This is one of the first things that I kind of picked up when I was getting into comics for the very first time. I've always loved Catwoman. She's always been one of my favorites. So doing a stack over here, I'm going to do a pile over here, because I am feeling lazy. Number 36, we're coming in with the Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. The most important thing that you need to know about this series is that there are horses that eat people. I don't know why I think that is the most important fact about this book, but something inside me changed at the beginning of this book and then was changed further at the end of this book, because whew, that ending. We are following two people who have different reasons for wanting to compete in these Scorpio races, but end up having to train together. And so suddenly it's not just that they have these things going on in their lives that mean they need to win this race. Extremely dangerous race, by the way. People get killed in this race regularly. It's worse than normal horse racing was back in this time. They need to win, but they also want the other to win as well. It is a beautiful, sweet little bonding love story, and it also is a story about a girl and a boy and their horses, and I ate it up. That is one that I've started before book 2, but going to one that's a more recent, the last couple of years that I've picked this series up, we have The Luminaries by Susan Dennison, and I always forget that you really can't see this cover. I have to hold it very still because of the glare. This is a very fun Buffy meets Gilmore Girls type of story where we have this whole society of monster hunters that are camped at different spots in the world that are hotbeds. They are living near the Hellmouth because every night they have to go into the forest, they have to kill the bads and make sure that they do not step out of the forest and go into the real world. There's a whole bunch of small town politics going in here. We have a main character who has been ostracized because of things that her father did, and she is trying her best to get her family back into the good graces of her community. A lot of family drama, a lot of small town politics, a lot of just real fun monster hunting, and just a little romance between two teenagers that are the worst at talking about the feelings. After that, I have what is quite possibly the oldest book that I own. Some of them were written before this book, but the edition of the book that I have is pretty new. This is the most beat up book. It was my mother's before it was mine, and that is Delaire's Book of Greek Myths. This book is responsible of so much of why you guys have to put up with me. I opened this up, and I learned about Greek mythology, and I was never the same. I've read it so many times. This one is not going on my bed because I like to sleep on my bed, and it is so old. There's probably mold in it. This is the original hardcover that my mother had. It has her name in it. She got it at 19, it looks like. So I've read through this so many times as a child. It's got these fantastic illustrations. I don't think do I need to explain what Greek mythology is to anyone? I feel like it's in the name, Greek mythology. If you ever get a chance to pick it up, this is a great way to introduce Greek mythology to kids, and it is just such a fun book to look through and like look at the pictures. I did so much just going through. And also, I don't know, it's a great way to process how messed up the world is. For number 33, let's talk about Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is a Regency romance, light fantasy. We are dealing with a world where fairies and magic exist, and we have a young woman who is looking for magical help because when she was a child, she was cursed by a fairy. She has what she perceives as issues with processing emotions and kind of feeling things in the moment. She kind of lives in this permanent state of almost dissociation. On top of that, so she meets with a sorcerer trying to figure out what's going on. He is currently busy trying to figure out why this magical plague is happening, and so she gets invested in helping him with that and then gets invested in him. It is delightful. It is fun. I had so much fun with this. I bought the second book before the first book was even done. Now, when I said I was going to give you a pretty good idea of my reading tastes, I had to include some nonfiction. We're going to start out with The The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. Hallie Rubenhold, in this, she sits down and she deconstructs the myth around Jack the Ripper and tears down a lot of the assumptions that have been put on him by society by going in and focusing on the women he killed and looking at their lives. And she draws her own conclusions as to why these women were targeted that don't necessarily fit with the popular narrative of why Jack the Ripper was targeting these women. She is really invested in making sure that you understand who these women were as people and understand the historical contexts around them, and she does it really well without resorting to a lot of jargon. I'm not saying this isn't educational. I'm not saying that this won't make you think a lot about how very little has changed in the way that we treat women. What I am saying is it is one of the most accessible historical nonfictions that I have ever read. After that, we need to talk about the book that inspired one of my favorite movies, and that is The Princess Bride, S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure by William Goldman. You may have heard of the movie The Princess Bride. Let me tell you, the movie and the book are equally as good, despite the clear differences that are between them. Part of why that is because William Goldman is the one that wrote the screenplay for the movie, and so he was able to expand upon things. Like, there are certain scenes in this book that are not explored fully that we do get to see in the movie. This book and the movie are just such a wonderful example of how, like, the ultimate way to translate a book to the screen. I love it. If you want to sit down and compare them, that's a fantastic job. The thing about the book is that makes it so much fun is that this is also, much like the movie, is also kind of a story within a story kind of thing. You notice S. Morgenstern is on there. There is no S. Morgenstern. He is someone that William Goldman made up because he has written this as though it is an abridged version of an older classic. It is absolutely hilarious. Just as funny as the movie. There's so much in here that they did not get to in the movie, and I think that it is such a fun thing to read, especially if you love that movie. After that, we have to talk about Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is still one of my favorite books that I have ever read because of BookTube. Kaz Brecker and Inej Gaffa, their relationship, I am still chasing the high that gave me. Now, people are going to tell you that this is a heist book. There are heists that happen in it. This is about 6 people who become family whilst having to deal with the things going on in their city of Ketterdam. There's a lot of stuff that is going on. If you like heist stories, this is going to be fantastic for you. Also, if you like found family, this is going to be a fantastic narrative for you. The characters are also wonderful and fully realized, and there is not a single character in here that I did not enjoy being in their head and following their point of view. And that is something that sometimes is hard to pull off with multi-point of view narratives. But there was not a single moment here that was boring to me as a reader. After that, we need to talk about a brand new release, just came out last year. It is The Shadow Sister by Lily Mead. If you don't know, Lily is a fellow Swiftie. We are friends. I love her. She is fantastic. I support everything that she has done. If you want a weird supernatural horror that follows family, you want to read this book. We're following our main character, Sutton, while she is dealing with the fact that her older sister has gone missing for a week. Her mom is white, her dad is black. Her mom is fully aware that getting people to look for her older sister is going to be more difficult because both Sutton and her sister are black. And so she is trying to manipulate the media and kind of get Sutton, get her sister, whose name I don't remember, Casey, get Casey to the forefront by projecting this perfect image of Casey. And Sutton's like, that's not the person I grew up with at all. There is some bad blood between the sisters, but Sutton also loves her sister and wants her to come home. She just feels very conflicted about this whole way that they are putting forward her sister's image. And then Casey comes back, but she is not quite right. And Sutton is absolutely certain that she is faking things, and she's trying to get to the bottom of it. For number 28, we have to talk about The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. This is a retelling of Scheherazade and the 1001 Arabian Nights. If you want slow burn romance, but you still want something to happen before the end of book one, this is one to pick up. It is such a beautiful world that Renee Ahdieh has created. She has just such interesting characters, and the motivations and the reasons why certain things are happening, she really thought this through. She gets herself sent to be one of the Sultan's brides in an attempt to get revenge for the death of her best friend, who was one of his previous brides, who, if you know anything about 1001 Arabian Nights, he killed a new bride every night. After that, we gotta recommend some middle grade in this video. It's gotta happen because I love reading it. I'm gonna start out by recommending Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I'll say if you read this and you enjoy it and you're not sure about the next two books, don't read them. There's some stuff in book two that I don't know that I recommend it, but this book is fantastic, and I definitely do recommend. This follows the plot of the movie Howl's Moving Castle. It's the original, it's the book that the movie was based off of, but it's a little bit different. This is a 1980s middle grade. It is very reminiscent of that time period, very tongue-in-cheek. We have a fantastic main character in Sophie Jenkins. Nope. That's not her name. Sophie Hatter. That's right, because her dad's a hatter. Basically, some stuff goes down. She gets cursed to look like an old woman and decides the easiest way to do that is to run off into the countryside and become the cleaning lady for a wizard who is most of the people in town are afraid of, but she's an old woman, so she doesn't have to worry about them because he only ever goes after young women. It is a ride from start to finish. The best parts of the movie are in here, and then a whole lot more. I thought we were going to pull out a book that I picked up either in high school or shortly after high school. Because I was homeschooled and because I also started college when I was in high school, some of that time is a lot of that time is a little bit blurred, but we're going to talk about Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. This is a YA. It is not a dark romance. But this is the dynamic that those dark romances are wanting to get. This is that dynamic done so well. We have Yelena. She is in prison for reasons. That's kind of a spoilery thing, like why she's in there, so I'm going to let you guys figure that out. She is pulled out of prison because the commander, who is the head of the government there, he needs a poison tester. He needs a food taster. And so she is pulled out by the chief of the commander's guard, and he's like, I'm going to train you to be the poison taster. That's what's going to happen. The dynamic between our main character and the love interest is fantastic. The world building for this country is fantastic. There are parts of it that are going to feel very, very familiar. I don't think I recognized those when I was reading this as a little baby teenager in my little conservative bubble. Now, here's the thing. It was ahead of its time in the way it treated these issues based on the other books that I was reading at the time, but I will say there is a plot point in here and a character thing that is, I would say, probably slightly transphobic. I will say, we'll warn you about that. It's a very short thing at the end. If you would like me to tell you what it is, I am more than happy to go into it in the comments and talk about, or DMs, and talk about why I feel that probably was not in the best taste, although I think the author had the best of intentions and was trying to normalize this. I just think maybe we could have thought about the framing a little bit. For book 26, we've got to talk about Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. This is one of the best Cinderella retellings you will ever read. It hits every time. This is such a good book. I have reread this so many times. I read this in middle school. I reread this as an adult multiple times, and every single time, just fantastic. It works. I don't know how Gail Carson Levine wrote something that could just be so divorced from the time that it was written and such a classic, but this is a classic of children's middle grade. We are following Ella. She is cursed to obey everything that she is told to do. So she kind of runs into some trouble with that, kind of falls in love with the prince, kind of realizes that if she follows through on her feelings for the prince, it could put the entire country in danger, and so we have a whole thing that happens. We also, obviously have stuff that goes on with her stepmother and her father and yada, 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 yada. It's Cinderella. Do I need to go further? There's a mild chance that I just called Ella Enchanted book 26 when it is actually book 25. Let's pretend like I said the number correctly. Number 24 is the volume that got me into comics. This is probably one of the most influential comic books in my life. It's going to be very apparent why I picked it up when I hold it up. I'm going to give you a second. If you want to pause and guess which comic this is, I'm wearing one of the clues. If you want to guess which comic this is, you can. And it is Batman A Hush. This is the, 15th anniversary. Good God, I'm old. That is the cover that made me pick this up. I found out later, and keep in mind, I have been a fan of Batman since I was about 4 years old. My first ship are these two. This is the first time in this continuity where Bruce Wayne tells Selina Kyle who he is. And God, that moment changed something inside of me because I never thought I would get it. This is a kind of long Halloween-esque story where Bruce is having recurring things happen. We go through Batman villains very similar in the way that we go through them in the Long Halloween. If you don't know, if you haven't read the Long Halloween, consider that an honorable mention because it is one of the most iconic Batman stories out there. I picked this up, if I am remembering correctly, I picked this up because Batman Begins came out, and that restarted my Batman phase. Number 23 is going to be Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is a prequel to Cassandra's original Shadowhunters series. In here, we find out that the Harrendale dramatics are in fact genetic, following Tessa, and she is dealing with the fact that she has been plunged, yet again, we have a character that's been plunged into this Shadowhunter world. This, in my opinion, is Cassandra Clare's best written series. This is post her being a brand new author. There's a lot of stuff I think that she figures out in City of Bones, etc., about how to write a book and how to write a novel. There's weaker plot points, also the whole faux incest plot point in the City of Bones, but it is pre when her editor stopped editing her books. I love her books. I love these characters. She has an overwriting problem. I highly recommend this series. If you are interested in the Shadowhunters, I suggest starting with this one. If you read none of her other series, this is the one to read. So that's my opinion. This one is not a book that you read front to back, but it had to be mentioned because I feel like it changed both the trajectory of my life and the trajectory of this channel. And that is going to be the Player's Handbook. This is the 2014 edition. I know there is a 2024 edition that has come out. I've been DMing out of this for so long. I might take things from the 2024 edition if I like them. But right now, this is what we're working out of for the campaign that I am running, and I am not updating anything until I am doing a new campaign. That's just how it's going to work. This is the only thing that you really need in order to play D&D. That's it. This is also pretty much the only thing that you need to DM. I'll be honest. Despite the fact that I have so many of the source books at this point because I love buying books. They do make my life easier. Almost everything you need is in this book or available online. You don't even need... that hurt. Oh, that hurt. You don't even really need dice because you can get them online. There are online dice rollers that you can get. I like my pretty math rocks though. It's just so easy to get a pretty set of dice for not a lot of money and feel better about the world. Moving on from there, we are going to talk about one of the best written books I've ever read, and that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a book I suggest reading slowly. I've heard people have really good success listening to this and also reading it at the same time, doing the whole immersion reading thing. I did not do that. I read it physically. I tried the audiobook. had to stop the audiobook, I think, because in like 30 minutes, I think I got through 30 minutes of the book before I was like, I have had to rewind this thing so many times in the first hour. I need to read this physically because there is so much going on. This is such a like deep, rich world and magic system, and there is a lot that you miss if you are not paying full attention to this book, which is why a lot of people recommend listening to the audiobook and reading it physically at the same time. This is such a fun book, or not. I don't know if it is such a fun book for people. This was such a fun book for me to read, not just because like I like the characters and I like the story and the political intrigue and all of that stuff, because we're following two or three different points of view. I actually can't remember whether it's 2 or 3 at this point. It's been a while. I need to reread it so I can finish the series. Long story. We're following the two points of view that we are following. We're following a mother who is tracking down her husband who has kidnapped her daughter and murdered her son. There is child death in this. And it's also happening in the middle of an apocalypse. In this world, they are constantly dealing with earthquakes. This is a sci-fi series. This first book feels very fantasy, but it is a sci-fi series. You'll understand as you go. Then we're also following another character. I don't know if their name is a spoiler, so I'm not going to name them. But we're following another character who is a young woman learning how to use her powers, which allow her to control some of these earthquakes. The reason that it was so much fun for me to read, I mean, it is a hard book. There's a lot in here that's really hard, but I was like fully 100 pages in. It's so well written. I was fully 100 pages in before I noticed that one of our points of view is in second person. Like, it's so well done, you don't even notice it's in second person. This is one to read. The hype is justified. After that, we have Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. When I tell you that T. Kingfisher knows her fairy tales inside and out, she has created like a brand new one. We're following Mara in this. She is the third of 3 daughters, and she has spent most of her life in a nunnery, but she has recently gone out into the world because she knows that her middle sister is currently married to a man who abused and, she believes, murdered their eldest sister. Like, they're princesses, by the way. They married the eldest princess to this man, died in a mysterious accident. Married the second princess to this man, and Mara started noticing some things, especially after her sister got pregnant, and so her sister's asked for her help, and Mara has embarked on 3 tasks trying to figure out how does she break her sister's marriage without catastrophic consequences for her very small country that everyone wants. Okay, there's like a whole bunch of politics going on there. It is set up very well at the beginning. We go on our little fairy tale adventure, and then we have some dealing with it at the end. We have a reluctant, disgraced knight. We have a bone dog. See, look, it's Bone Dog. It's Bone Dog. After that, we have to talk about what, in my opinion, is the best written Shakespeare play. Now, here's the thing. Because it is a comedy, it quite often gets discounted. Especially because a lot of the humor, because a lot of people don't understand Elizabethan jargon, it gets discounted because people don't get the humor. They don't get that this play, despite being some of the best written, is also like 90% thick jokes, and that is Much Ado About Nothing. Did I say that, like, Poison Study, they were the blueprint for enemies to lovers? This is the blueprint for enemies to lovers. This is an enemies to lovers comedy of errors with 2 people who absolutely cannot stand each other, ending up being tricked by their friends into falling in love, and then having to team up to avenge one of the character's cousin's honor. Again, as I have said, it is my favorite Shakespeare play in existence. I've read a lot of Shakespeare because I was a theater major, so I read a lot of it. And a theater kid, I guess the reading of the Shakespeare started, this is actually something I read in high school. I don't even remember at this point if I picked this up for a class or if I just picked it up because I was a theater nerd and I loved plays. I can't remember at this point. Honestly, here's the thing. Shakespeare's plays, not meant to be read. They're meant to be seen. That's how I learned about this. The Kenneth Branagh film. Go watch that. It's a little bit abridged from this. There are pieces that it leaves out, but nothing really terribly important for the modern audience. Go watch it. It's got Emma Thompson in it. And Emma Thompson. Honestly, actually, no. The full, best version of this play I've ever seen is actually the David Tennant and Catherine Tate version. If you can get your hands on that, watch it. If you cannot, again, the Kenneth Branagh version is how I was introduced to this, and the costuming in that, the sets in that, fantastic, fantastic. Both of them are set not in the time that this was written, but most of Shakespeare's plays were set in not the time that they were written as well, costume-wise. Alright, after that we have some more middle grade making an appearance with Other Words from Home by Jasmine Warga. We're following Judah, a young Syrian girl who had to leave her father and her brother behind as she and her mother came to the United States to stay with family. This takes place during a period where Syria was under attack. It was unsafe for them. And so they come to the United States, and she is having to navigate the fact that she's learning English. She's acclimating to a completely new middle school. And she's also like got her sights set on being not the lead, but she just wants to be in their yearly musical. And so she's trying to figure out how to navigate that while also dealing with the fact that she's got a new sister on the way. This is a book written in verse. This is one that's just, it'll take you an afternoon to read, and it is going to tear at all of your heartstrings. After that, we have The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dowd. This is about an alien invasion and also kind of a Romeo and Juliet tale. We're following Morris and Ellie. Ellie is a human. She has been running an underground library. The aliens just recently came over and they like just basically took away everything human except for like sustenance, and like they didn't break up families or anything like that, but everyone is having to live in New York City in like all of these buildings, and she's got kind of this underground library that she's been kind of passing books out to people. And then we also have Morris, who is one of the aliens, sort of. He is not there for the same reason that the other aliens are there. That's as much as I can tell you. This book, I love it so much because the description of demisexuality, because both of our main characters in this are demisexual, the description of demisexuality in here just so perfectly fits how I feel about relationships and sex and all of that, and I just really appreciated being able to see that in writing and being able to read characters that were like that. This is one of the first ones that I did discover after kind of coming to that realization. After that, we have a book that I discovered in college, and that is Leviathan by Scott Westerfeld. I do need to show you that part of the reason I love this book, ooh, that's too far ahead. I don't want to give you guys spoilers. Part of the reason that I love this book is that it's got pictures in it. I think we need more YA that does this. This is an alternate World War I setting where it's basically the same as World War I with a few exceptions. First, the biggest exception is Franz Ferdinand and his wife had a son, who is one of our main characters. He comes from a culture that is very heavily into mechs, like they have these giant robots that they use, and he kind of goes on this cross-country thing. We also have Darren, who is a young girl who has disguised herself as a boy in order to join the British Airmen during this war, and the British/Allied side are Darwinists, which means that they have figured out how to splice DNA. We figured that out a little bit early, and they've used that to create these like just different chimeras, basically. They're called beasties in this, but they are basically chimera. For example, that is a jellyfish that has been turned into a hot air balloon. So not only do you have two different approaches of like the Austro-German side versus the kind of the Allied side, you also have the Darwinists versus the Clankers, two different approaches to science and where they think the future of the world should go. Moving on to number 15, we have Miss Percy's Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. This is a like Regency romance. Really, the romance is very back burner low key, I'll be honest. It's there. It keeps coming up. It's a beautiful romance between a spinster and a vicar, but the main thing is that that's actually book 2. Hold on. Here's the correct book, Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. She is currently taking care of her sister's children. She kind of moved in after their father died, was like, I'll stay with you guys until I get married, and then just never got married. She has received an inheritance from her uncle. One of those things is a dragon egg. At this point, they were not aware that dragons were even a real thing, and then the dragon egg hatches. It is very voicey, I will say that. I know not everyone likes a voicey narrator. It's very much like something that breaks the fourth wall and talks directly to the reader. I really appreciate that, again, because theater background, and that is just such a fantastic narrative technique. I love it. For number 14, I have Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall. This is not my first introduction to intersectional feminism, but this is such a great resource for anyone that is trying to learn about intersectional feminism. Mickey Kendall's approach to feminism is truly, in my opinion, intersectional. She understands the idea of meeting people where they are because she understands if you have not met their basic needs, you can't start talking to them about some of the the other parts of feminism. Feminism is taking care of people. Where is it? Hold on. She has a fantastic definition. Here it is. This is kind of the thesis of the book, where what she's trying to get across to people is that a one-size-fits-all approach to feminism is damaging because it alienates the very people it is supposed to serve without ever managing to support them. I started following her on Twitter prior to her publishing this book, but just so much of my view of feminism was built by this woman. And so I obviously went out to buy her book, and then there was even more in this book. I really appreciate the way that she broke things down. I appreciated the way that she made sure to include the full spectrum of people that feminism is supposed to be protecting and serving and moving the needle forward. Make a Kindle is where my journey with a lot of these started. The, like, forebears, the people that she is referencing in here, I know about them because she took the time to talk about them and educate about them, and I absolutely I can't say enough good things about this book. That's where we are. We're going to move on to shift to a completely different vibe. Full Metal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. This is my favorite manga ever. I was reading it when it was coming out. Nothing has hit the way that this manga hit. It starts out as like this fun kind of adventure between two brothers. They are trying to, as they say, get their bodies back because some stuff went down when they were younger. One of them fully has lost his body. He is a soul that is tied to a piece of armor with alchemy. And then we have Ed. He is missing an arm. He is missing a leg. And they have set out trying to get their bodies back, as they say. He has become the Full Metal Alchemist in this attempt to restore himself and especially his brother, because his biggest concern is if anything happens to that seal that is currently anchoring his brother's soul, he loses his brother. They were like children when they did this because Ed is too smart for his own good. Starts out as this kind of like thing with these two brothers, but so much of this is actually about war and propaganda, and it holds up so it is sad, but it holds up so incredibly well. Just the way that she explores the way war affects people and what it does to people, it's brilliant. Okay, I'm constantly shocked by how well not only this handles things, but how timely it still is. We just keep adding likes as the sun goes down because apparently my brain doesn't want to film until it is the afternoon. So anyways, moving on to the final 12 books. Skill Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is a fantastic romance about a woman who has a chronic illness. She is doing her best. She decides at one point that she needs to get out, be on her own. She creates this list. There's like a mild near-death experience that she has, and up to this point, she's been living with her parents because she has chronic pain issues, and so it's just easier, like, she just hasn't moved out because, like, she's been dealing with all of this. She's finally got herself in a place where she, like, has it managed to some extent. It still affects her, but she does have it. She knows how to manage it. She's not doing the whole learning curve anymore. Long story short, near-death experience, she creates a list and then meets a man, the superintendent of the building, and she's like, hey, will you help me with some of the things on this list? Because he happens to be able to check off some of the things on the list. Wonderful. It's beautiful. It is such a fun romance. The spicy scenes are brilliant. Oh man, she's so creative. She is so creative with her spicy scenes. Also, part of why this is on the list is because, like, when I was, there's a moment in the very beginning where Chloe is lying on the floor just because it was a good place to be at the time. Like, I don't think if I remember correctly, there wasn't even anything like going on. She just lay down on the floor and there's this thought process going on in her head of, I need to get up because if I don't get up, everyone's going to come in and they're going to freak out and they're going to assume something is wrong and I don't want the fuss. And as someone who also, fully different chronic illness, but like as someone who also deals with chronic illness and has had people, it doesn't like the fuss, I related to her so much in that moment. I felt so seen. After that, we have another read from high school, and that is Crown Duel by Sherwood Smith. This is the original cover that I read when I read it the first time. This is Crown Duel and Court Duel bound up in one. It is now sold as the single volume. It's no longer sold as the two separate volumes, which is how I read it. This is another one of like the ultimate enemies to lovers. We are following Meliara, and she and her brother are rebelling against the king, basically. He is taxing people. He is doing things that, like, there's a whole thing going on with their magic system, and there are basically Ents that live in their forests, and they have this agreement, and there's a whole bunch of just great world building and political stuff that is in there, but some of it is a spoiler. But basically, she and her brother are rebelling against the king, and she ends up getting caught by the commander of the king's army. She's about 16, and this is slightly a spoiler, but he's not much older, to be honest. He is not much older. There's a lot of the king's generation has been put aside, and the king has taken into his court the children of this generation, and made them his court because they are how he is controlling most of the noble families. Meliara and her brother did not go to court for reasons, and then a whole bunch of others. Actually, I can't tell you that because that's so much spoilers. After that, we have A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is a portal fantasy. We're following Kel and we're following Lila Bard, but we're following Kel, and he has gotten himself into some trouble because this world, there are different worlds. There's like 4 different worlds. One of them has been fully closed off. Kel goes between his London, which is Red London, and he goes to White London, and he goes to Grey London, which is our London. He accidentally transports something from White London to Grey London, and he gets into a bit of trouble, and in him getting into a bit of trouble, Lila also gets into a bit of trouble, and so suddenly they're having to hop across the worlds to get this thing and deal with it, and there's just a whole bunch going on there. I love the magic system in this. After that, we have to talk about The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I absolutely adore this. I love books with angry girls. Heal something inside of me. We are following Jude in this. As a child, her current father showed up, killed her parents, because her mother was his previous wife, and then took them back to fairy. He is a fairy, by the way. He is a red cap. That's important. He is not human. There's a lot to unpack that I can't get into because, again, spoilers. But she's been protected because her father is a very important person in fairy, but she doesn't want to have to depend upon her father and his protection, especially because there are a lot of fairies, including the Prince Carden, that do not like her and do not think she and her mortal sister belong in fairy. And so this book is about her deciding that she is done, and she is going to get her own power, have her own ways to protect herself so she doesn't have to depend on anyone else. For number 8, which happens to be my favorite number, we have The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchison. This is one of the most just effed up books on this list. I'm going to say right out of the bat, there are trigger warnings in this for sexual assault, for assault of a child, or attempted assault of a child. No, yes, for rape, for kidnapping. There is a lot in here. It is a very dark book. I can get more specific if you would like. Feel free to ask me in the comments or DM me. This is such a good book, though. So we're following 2 different storylines. We have an FBI team that has just recently busted this dude in, like, I don't know, not upstate Massachusetts, in Massachusetts or Maryland or something. He is somebody who is important, who's got a lot of money, has a really big, sprawling estate. And on that estate, he has a little conservatory. And in that conservatory, he keeps a captive harem of girls that he has kidnapped off the street. And then we are also following, so this FBI team is sitting down with one of the girls who seems to kind of know the most about what's going on. And then we're following this young woman who is telling her story, telling people about, like, we're getting stuff from her childhood, we're getting stuff from when she was first kidnapped. It is one of the few books that has nearly had me crying in public. I don't cry, I understand, I'm a robot. It's a thing. I was sitting in a coffee shop, like, fighting back tears, trying not to break down in a public space. We're gonna see the book that got me into horror later. This is the book that got me into thrillers. After that, we have Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. This is a love story between 2 gamers who both have very mistaken assumptions about the other person, the person on the other side of the screen. So we're following Maggie and Aiden. They meet playing with this online RPG game, and think Baldur's Gate, think Dragon Age, that kind of thing. They meet playing this game, and Maggie thinks that Aiden is a college student, and Aiden thinks that Maggie is an 80-year-old grandma. It is not the case. They are both very close in age to each other. stuff goes down when they finally meet in person, just because of the situation where they finally meet in person, and the way that Aiden handles that, mwah. We love a man who is aware of the fact that he is a big man and that women are going to feel unsafe if they do not know him, and I love that. It's slow burn, I'll tell you that. I think about that much is where we get spicy stuff, but I just adored this. Aiden, I believe, is both bisexual and demi. I know the bisexual part is correct. I can't remember whether the demisexual part is correct, but you know. This is one, I'm pretty sure, because I think that's one of the things that attracted me to this book. It's so good. Please read it. For number 6, I have one more nonfiction for you, and that is I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. A lot of this is about Austin Channing Brown navigating primarily white church spaces as a Black woman. A lot of it, like she covers more than that, but there is a big emphasis on that. This book is one of the ones that was so influential in my deconstruction of evangelicalism. So if that is a journey that you are currently going on, if that is something that you want more into that mindset, definitely read this, okay? Like, it is both anti-racist and deconstructionist. After that, we have to talk about Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. This book, it is part space western, part detective noir. We are following a detective who has been hired to find a missing person. Her family is very rich. She's been out in the belt, like the asteroid belt, and he is trying to find her for her family. And then we are also following the last 4 members of a crew that their ship, they went out to see, like to a distress beacon, but it was a trap, and their main ship got blown up, but they were able to escape. And so they're trying to get revenge, but they also get pulled into getting to the bottom of this. The main character of this series, who carries us through all 9 books, is James Holden, and I love him. I love his crew, the Rocinante. They are a family. They are my family. James S.A. Corey was able to do things, especially in the later books, that most authors, if they had done that, they would have been excommunicated from my shelves. And yet, I have not stopped recommending the series, recommending the TV show. After that, we have to talk about I Tell You I Love You, but then I'd have to kill you by Ally Carter. This is the first book in the Gallagher Girls series. This is one that was so influential when I was a young adult. I read this in my late teens, I want to say, is when I found this series. We are following Cammie Morgan. Her mother is the headmistress of an all-girls spy school. Spying is in Cammie's blood. She's going to this school. She knows she is going to be, she's called Cammie the Chameleon. She's able to blend into every situation. The problem is that Cammie decides to sneak out one night, and when she sneaks out, she meets a boy. Like one of the town boys outside of the school. This is a great series if you have readers that are looking for more like younger YA, a little bit of upper middle grade. Fantastic series to recommend to them. After that, we have My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. We are following Jay Daniels in this one. She is obsessed with slasher films. And so this book is partly her writing about the slasher films, breaking them down by the different tropes and conventions of the drama, while also slowly coming to the realization that her town of Proof Rock is dealing with potentially their own slasher situation, which she's like, well, I've been training for this my entire life. There is so much in this. There's a lot of body horror. There's a lot of gore, just so you are aware, especially at the end. I suggest starting with this one if you're looking to get into Stephen Graham Jones' books. It's so good. I love Jade as a main character. She is fantastic. It's really messed up, I will say, because of some of the stuff that happens. There are discussions in this book of sexual assault of a minor, so just know that that's something that's in there. And it is covered. I don't remember how much in the conversation, I don't remember how much detail has gone into, but I do know that we know it happens and that we know some of how it happens. So if that is something that you need to steer away from it. Read it, okay? This is such a good book. I love it so much. We have our final 2 books, and you guys probably have an idea of which 2 books we're dealing with here. You probably don't know which order they're going to be in, but they did make the list, don't worry. The first one is The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. We're following Percy Jackson in this one. You've probably heard of this series. He witnesses the death of his mother at the hands of the Minotaur, and then promptly finds out that his father is not only a Greek god, but the god Poseidon. And he has been accused of stealing his uncle Zeus's Master Bolt, and so now he has to go on a cross-country adventure to get the Master Bolt back so he can prevent a war between the gods and clear his own name. I picked this up because I was a Greek mythology girly at heart. This is a book that I needed as a teenager. I needed Annabeth Chase as a teenager. I think we would have figured out what was going on up here a lot sooner if I had had this book. It is my favorite series ever. Like, just, I love everything about it. I love the way that Rick has modernized the Greek mythology. I love Percy and Annabeth as, like, characters, and I love their relationship and the way that they are. Oh, it just, again, it's like, well, this is more like rivals to lovers, and it takes a while. It's a very slow burn because they're 12. Final one. This is one I wish I'd had, again, as a teenager, and I would not have been able to have as a teenager because it was written like 2001. But that is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. This, to bring it full circle, teenage Batcat in fantasy Poland. This is a retelling of the Goose Girl fairy tale, only in this one we are following the servant who has stolen the princess's identity. She's done this for a very specific reason, and that is because she is the goddaughter of Death and Fortune. She is currently trying to escape her godmothers because they told her that she's going to have to decide which of them she wants to serve, and she's like, I don't want to serve you, I want to be your daughter. And if that's what's going on, I'm going to get as far away as I can from you so that you have no influence over me. So she's trying to save up money in order to do this. And the way that she's been saving up money in order to do this is that she has been pretending to be Princess Giselle and going to parties. And while she is going to the parties, she's been robbing them. Like, Giselle will disappear for a little bit, and then she will go and rob them, and then Giselle will go home or come back, however it works out. Everything's going along swimmingly. She's almost got as much as she needs, and then she ends up being cursed because she stole from someone who was protected by one of the other low gods, so she ends up being cursed. She's got 2 weeks to return what she's stolen, or she is going to turn into, not living, a statue of rubies and pearls. She's slowly turning into rubies and pearls, and then on top of that, they've called in the authorities, and there's a very young junior detective that is starting to dig into her business and very quickly zeroes in on the fact that there's something up with Princess Giselle. And there you have it, 37 of my favorite books ever. There are so many books that I had to leave off of this list. It's fine, but those are some of the best books and most favorite books that I've ever read. Have I talked about any of your favorites in this video? Let me know in the comments down below, or let me know what the top 3, if you were to make one of these videos, what would your top 3 books be on that list of favorite books for whatever year you're currently at. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you like the vibes, that subscribe button is right down there. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye! Because today is my 37th book day. The ADHD is ADHDing, apparently.